Hello, listeners. Welcome to the Healing House podcast. I am your host, Patty Spack. Now, today is a special episode. I usually interview other people on health and wellness and spirituality and all sorts of wholesome things. But for this episode, I just got back from Hawaii and had an incredible spiritual experience. And I just was in a totally different, non-located place. The purpose of this episode is to share a lot of the learning lessons that I went through during this process. I had decided to leave where I was living. I had a huge breakdown. I was sad. I did the Vipassana retreat, which is also the episode right before this, if you want to check that out first. And it all led me to just take a break and go farm in Hawaii. I needed space to think, feel, clear my head, and listen to the next direction in my life because I was being moved. I was genuinely waking up and something wasn't right. And so I needed that space for things to come up. And there's so much that I learned, and I popped out of Hawaii with a ton of insight. So I felt it was really useful to share my story. I spoke with my beautiful friend, Justin, who I will link all his beautiful stuff below. He is a singer, a songwriter, a guitar player. He's a creative coach. He even creatively coached me when I was procrastinating my podcast. And he's just an amazing conversationalist. And I knew that having this conversation with him would be very deep, insightful. So please go check out Justin's stuff. Also, he plays at live venues. Overall, basically low-key famous. Check out his stuff on Spotify and Apple. A great human being. Yeah, I know that as I was editing this podcast, I know parts of it can be very heavy, and especially the place that I was coming from mentally. I was having so much deep insight, but it's just where my heart was lying at the time. And even still now in Colorado, a lot of those pieces are still with me and marinated inside. So it's just a really cool friggin' podcast. And yeah, it was really cool to be on the other end of the microphone, and also getting to talk to Justin, and his way of holding the conversation was so nice. So giving such huge thanks to Justin. Hope you guys enjoy this episode. Please message me. Please reach out to me on Instagram and tell me what you thought at MZXPATRISHA. If you're wondering why that's weird, it's because it used to be my AIM screen name. For those that are born in the 90s, you know. I will also link the Woofing program down below. Woofing is the worldwide organic farming program that allowed me to travel in exchange for trading on a farm. It was the most holistic experience I've ever had. I didn't have to go to the gym. I didn't have to worry about groceries or eating healthy. Just everything was there. Your exercise was there by working on the farm, eating healthy from eating on the farm. My mental health was, at first I was really depressed getting there because I was coming from such a crazy lifestyle and it took some adjustment. But after some time, things just began to chill the F out, and I felt so frickin' open in my heart, like beyond words. Yeah, till this day I'm just super grateful, and I'm wondering how to carry that in my heart as I move forward, because we all know that happiness isn't outside of us, but it's inside.
Welcome to the Healing House. We will be starting the healing process shortly. Before you enter, please leave your mind temporarily at the door and enter with your soul. We are now entering a space of total consciousness. Here's your host and guide, Patty Spack.
This episode is brought to you by Mudwater. Mudwater is a coffee alternative containing lion's mane mushroom, chaga, reishi, cacao, Himalayan salt, and they offer a variety of other products as well. They now have a turmeric version and they have a rest version as well that contains valerian root. I have tried all three of them and I am a huge fan of Mudwater. Please get your $20 off your first order plus 15% off subscribing with my link. It will be mudwater.com, MUDWTR, no vowels, / mudwater.com, the healing house. That's MUDWTRCOM, the healing house. I'll link it below. Thanks, guys. All the what do they call it?
The notes?
ASMR.
Oh, ASMR. Okay.
Everyone's going to hate this. Okay. If they're in their car, they're like,
Some of them will love it, though.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
Some of them will be like,
that's very true.
Play that again. Let me loop that part.
This is an unfolding conversation that hasn't been said between the two of us before. So, I just got back from Hawaii. I did a 2-month organic farming under the Wwoofing program, which stands for Worldwide Organic Organizational Organic
Foot.
Farming.
Oh,
yeah,
farming.
Yeah, farming. Foot.
People on foot. Woofing always sounds like, I got to woof it there.
Yeah, I always spell it wrong too. Yeah, but it was an amazing program. It was in Maui. I have had since such a amazing comeback from Maui and integrating back into San Diego just for a week before going to the next farm. And I think the insight of coming back from Maui is extremely telling in a very simple way.
Just in you right now that you're holding, and you're holding it well. You're like holding the potency well. The bigger context, though, of all this, that would be cool to touch on. You going to woof and be in Hawaii and on a farm, like that choice, what's the picture that was part of? Because that was not just like, I want to woof, I'm going to go woof, like that sounds fun. Like,
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So it seems in my life that the pattern of healing for me, and I'm sure many people can also relate, is that I tend to go through these dark nights of the soul right before something major shifts or changes. And it's rather dramatic for my life, but it seems to be, looking back, this push from the universe that's cornering me to either make a change within myself or in the environment around me. And that's sort of been my struggle in my life, is wondering if I need to change something outside or inside, or why is this not working? And everything seems to fall apart right before it comes together. And that definitely started to happen in December and January of this past year. I lost my best friend in October, and I began a very intense grieving process. And I was beginning to not feel happy with the way I was aligning my life. It just didn't match the inside. The outside wasn't matching the inside. So there was just something off, and I believe that dark night of the soul that comes up is the discrepancy between the outside and the inside for anyone's life, not just mine. So that started to grow vividly, and I was really waking up with these awful, empty in my gut feelings, and I just didn't understand why, because I had made and structured my life on the outside so perfectly to what I thought would be right for me, and my body was saying it's not.
How was your body saying it's not?
Through that feeling in my belly. It was a lot of people actually describe it. It's usually that feeling when you wake up in the morning and it's just like something's missing. It feels like a big gap. And most people are afraid of it, and I certainly have been most of my life. But going to Hawaii was a way for me to explore more deeply what that was to explore maybe it has something good to say rather than, something negative, I guess. So there's another podcast of me explaining me going to a Vipassana retreat where I spent 10 days, 10 hours a day silent. That was a huge preceding event up to all of this. But when I came back from that, I said, I don't know what I have to do. I just can't be doing what I'm doing now. And I started looking online for farms, because I figured if I can take myself out of my life just for a few months, maybe I can hear more clearly what's going on in here rather than keeping busy in my head. And also I get to learn a new skill, and also I get to be in nature, and also I get to meet new people. So there is all these benefits to doing farming. So I went on, and it sort of lined up really perfectly.
It's always so incredible when it's not like someone hands you the plan, says, this is what you're about to go through, what you're going to do, how you're going to respond to it, what you're going to do about it, and then where you're going to end, but we can navigate through all these moves that are like a response to an inner experience in an inner world. And so I hear that, and you recalling all that like you had this impulse, this need to listen and respond, and then pivot and make changes, and like change the direction of your life for the unforeseeable future. Not like I'm just going to do this for 3 months. It wasn't like that. I mean, the mind would love that. The mind would love, give me the plan, give me the timeline.
I need to know what's on the other side of this unknown.
Tell me how bad it's going to hurt on 1 to 10, and then I might agree to it, right? But
yes. And that's the thing, is that mind always wants to know, but universe speaks in unknown. So it sort of can't be in the plan. You can you're using your mind to make the necessary steps. But once you have a safety net with you and you know what's going to happen, then it's not the lessons or the things that you need to hear, because it's has to come from a deeper place.
Yeah. So it's like, how do we make friends with the unknown? In a way, I feel like that's been a part of your journey, and you have done that these past few months. Vipassana, woofing. So I'd love to hear more about that. How would you?
So it's sort of like, it's like anything that you practice. You're not great at it at first. Well, there's nothing to be great at here, but just the practice of not knowing something so many times in my life and then going for it anyways had built a tremendous faith and trust in using, in a way, this unknown sort of dark night of the soul as a tool to know that something good is coming, that something is changing, that I'm not any different from the trees when the leaves fall off to make new growth, or a lizard when it sheds its skin. It's all the same process, and so is our consciousness is made
by nature. So it's not out of the picture with that growth process. So it's just a lot of going for it when you're not sure, and creating trust. And I often, many times, have stayed at the crossroads of something for many, many, many years, not knowing, well, what if this happens, or what if this happens over here if I go this way, or whatever. That's the mind trying to, again, take something that it can't possibly know and try to make sense of it. But that's the thing that's in the way.
Yeah.
You can't know. You have to choose something, and it's all information. There is no wrong choice. So, I mean, I even thought at first, why am I picking Hawaii? Because in my heart, I've always wanted to go to Colorado. So I thought that I was taking a detour, so to speak, picking Hawaii. I'm like, it'd be fun, to go to that farm. But it ended up being information and a whole learning process and an entire experience that I don't regret. So yeah, even the mistakes too, right? It just carves the only path that's there.
It almost reveals itself as the path. I mean, we have our plans for the path, and that's all well and good, but then as we get going, life happens and we have to respond to it. And so it sounds like, what you've just described is something sort of forced you or urged you or offered you the opportunity to reframe a lot of what you were feeling. You bright-sided it, but sometimes that's our only way. That's our only way out, is to be like, okay, I can't shake this. I can't run from it. What's going on, and how is this serving me? Because if I start approaching it that way, then I'll probably stop resisting it, and I might get through it sooner. There's still that part of the mind, right? It's like, can we get this over with?
Yeah.
When it's like, well, it ain't over till it's over.
Times.
Right? And then it also sounded like you normalized like not knowing being okay, and surrendering being okay, pausing being okay, and so something made all that worth it. It's like when we choose something really hard, don't you think we have to have some sense already of it being worth it?
Yeah. And certainly in the beginning, that's not there. So the first time you ever make a big decision for yourself, it's the scariest one, because you have no way of knowing until you take that leap, so to speak. So, and I don't want to make it seem like the entire process was bright-sided, because this is more of a hindsight looking back. I'm like, oh, it actually turned out great. But okay. I was in the darkest moments when everything was changing, and I didn't want to be working my job anymore, and I didn't want to be living here, but I didn't know where to go. It didn't make any sense, et cetera, et cetera. It was all falling apart, everything that I had invested myself in, even my identity here, and the clothes that I was wearing. It felt really? it felt like I was having another identity crisis. I'm like looking at my closet and I'm like, this is not me.
Yeah, who's this?
And who is this? And that's been that underlying question throughout all of these changes, even moving here from Connecticut.
When was that?
3 years ago.
3 years ago.
So that happened again. That was the first time that I went through a really tough period and came out here. So yeah, it's just a hindsight. You sort of have to go through to then see that it's okay. But the mind doesn't like to hear that for sure.
Right. And do you think at this point, do you suspect that, in the big picture of, let's just say, human experience, the self, or the sense of identity, it must be this. It must be this evolving, unfolding, continual shedding thing. Like that is just the nature of self and identity, is like, I'm this, and then after a little bit, I'm not that, I'm this.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
over and over and over, right?
Over and over and over again. Yeah, it's I think why I changed my life so much in the past 6 years is because I wanted to know what doesn't change. Because I'm constantly that type of person that's like, oh, I want to be a skateboarder now, and I buy a skateboard and I want to put on roller skates, and I want to learn this, and I want to do that, and I want to learn surfing, and those things are beautiful. I think
fun.
They're fun,
Yeah.
but when I looked at the underlying reason of why I'm trying to change so many hats or put so many different hats on, is that I wanted to find out who I was.
Yes.
And who we really are doesn't change on the deepest level as a soul or a consciousness. And I developed that awareness through the yoga I was doing out here, through the meditation. But we definitely, all of us, have tried to seek ourselves through personality or a different type of
clothes,
person,
friend group, job, right?
Yeah.
Isn't that a trip to sort of stand back and be like, whoa, that might be driving everything? The question of, it's almost like these two are wrapped up. Who am I? And what is changeless?
That's it.
Right?
That's why Ramana Maharshi's direct meditation line is to just sit and ask, who am I, so many times. And
like
it's
literally
not
just sit there and go, who am I? And ask it again and just keep asking.
Well, in your head, but
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, because you're actually not going to ever get an answer, because there isn't a localized place where you begin and end at the deepest level. But that's where all of this stuff is born from. That's why people are searching or looking for something. And I started to recognize that in myself. So I fought with myself so many times about even going to do something like that, because I knew that's why I was doing it. I was in search of myself.
Yeah.
But I know paradoxically I had to do it to find out that I don't actually go anywhere or become anything. And I know that sounds
like
a little out there.
No, right away it sounds like wherever you go, there you are.
Yes.
I'm going to go searching for me. And you're like, well,
yeah, you're taking
already
yourself
got me,
with you. Yeah, exactly.
But let's go.
It's why they say a mirror can't watch itself or a knife can't cut itself. That phrasing
never heard of that. That's cool.
In meditation is because of that, because you're taking yourself with you, yet we go on these journeys to search.
We're here for it, aren't we?
Absolutely.
Are we here to be done searching?
I don't think so. Yeah, I don't think so. It's all part of the process, and there's nothing wrong with it. It's a beautifully designed structure.
Yeah. So you've had these beautiful experiences the last couple months, and oh God, I want to ask so many questions. So first, what do you feel like you've discovered of the changeless you?
That's a good one. Well, I'm going to back up just a little bit on how Hawaii got me to discover some of those things. Going there, now I was on the island of Maui, and I know in the paper they had said, just so you know, we're in Hana Maui, which is away from everything else. There's a 2-hour road that separates us. I'm like, yeah, but
Maui,
right. And they're like, but there is a flight you can take, and there is hitchhiking, et cetera, et cetera. I'm like, okay, like that sounds good.
Adventure.
But once I got there, I was the first farmer there. Everyone had left for that chapter, and so I was the newcomer for the first 2 weeks before everyone else came. And it was not as easy as I thought to get around places. And then, of course, in April, it's rainy season on that side. It's a very rural part of Maui. So I quite literally spent most of my time farming until 1, and then sitting in a bus that was renovated that I lived in, and there was centipedes and like animals and bugs, and I knew that part would be there, but I think once you're there and that's your life all day long, the sort of what am I doing here sadness crept in, and I even called my mom and said, I don't know why I came here, and I think I want to, if this doesn't get better, like I want to come home, I think.
It's like, it's not immediately clear.
It's not immediately clear. What the hell did I do? And then I got adjusted to it. I started connecting to the wildlife out there, the plants. My work became my purpose in a way, and I was receiving the fruits of my labor. I got to eat on the farm. I was able to create something and then also receive it back. So that was something that was very different from the life I lived here in the city or in Connecticut, because it felt like I was on a hamster wheel trying to work 10,000 jobs to make rent. To the input and output was off. Was very off.
Right.
So at least on the farm, I got to experience creating something, working with nature, also learning something, also trying new things, making connections with people from all over the world. And then as that process went on, my mind, I don't know when it happened. There wasn't a point in time, but I just had realized that my mind was a lot slower and there was less things for me to do. And that was something going into it. I was afraid, my God, there's nothing to do. I'm like, but why do I need something to do?
It's so funny when we find out who's asking that question. What is there to do there?
Yeah. I need to keep occupied because I can't sit still. But that clearly was seen as the mind or the ego or the habitual patterns that I had lived from before. So
that experience was like a mirror at first of all the ways in which maybe you weren't easily adapting to a new situation,
right,
a new environment, a new flow, new schedule, new activities. What I really hear in that too is like you adjusted your ratios, and what I mean by that is, of our time spent waking, what is spent doing all this, that, the other thing. And so now you have all this time in nature, you're touching the land, you're looking at the land, you're having to interact with it, pretty much have a relationship connection, an awareness. I'm aware of you, and then I respond, right? You need tilling, you need weeding, or you need picking or pruning, right? And getting into that rhythm, how long did it feel like it took until you're like, okay, I think there's a groove here and I'm in it?
Probably a few weeks I started to notice.
Cool.
Because it's gradual for sure.
Yeah.
And then that's when other people came in. Oh. And I actually found, I think this was the first part, was I was just starting to become used to being the only farmer there and the only one, that when other people arrived for their experience woofing, I was at first like, it's like, I have to socialize now. But I started to realize that my mind, ego, whatever, or this Patty didn't like change. So anytime something changes, it just was like, bah. But then I ended up always liking the changes that happened, because there was constantly new woofers coming in and leaving. And at first when someone new came in, I'm like, I have to meet someone new, and it's a whole process. And I also was watching that narrative. I'm like, okay. And then you'd get really close with them because you're eating and living with them and working with them. Within 1 to 2 weeks, and then they would have to leave because some left after a month and some would stay 3 months, and then you're like, no, don't go. So one of the biggest discoveries that I recognized very clearly, because everything was able to slow down, my emotions were very immediate. I was able to see something more immediately in my body, witnessed and observed. So there was a lot of grasping onto people and experiences, like, oh, don't go, or oh, this is so perfect, I don't want it to go away, I want to keep it in a pocket and, you know, write about it and do this and do that with it, which is okay. And then there was a lot of resistance to things too, and so I was able to see that a little bit more clearly than maybe if my mind and life had been really busy and occupied. However, this created so much space for me to write poetry. I was writing poetry every day because I wanted to explain the experiences I was having. So
Love that.
that was a byproduct.
Yeah.
A good one.
Yeah, totally. Having the outlet and the sort of safe place to work things out, process, make sense of them, let things land that were kind of swirling around, and then land in their own unique, beautiful way. Not like, I'm writing this so I can explain it to other people. Right?
Yeah. Yeah. There was...
Or were you writing your memoir?
No. No, someone said this to me. I was experiencing a lot of writer's block for poetry or creativity before going. And all of a sudden it rushed in Hawaii, probably because I had all this space. But someone explained that writer's block is not necessarily a block of creativity, but that I just needed more input because there was nothing coming in. I had expended all the inspiration and the lessons that I was learning from San Diego, that now I had changed my environment and I was having different realizations and insights, that the input was now coming in at a full speed. I now had something to translate it to and put it into something. So a lot of poetry was born there. On a daily basis, I would just have my coffee and be like, burr, 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 the birds, I am the trees and nature. And just was flowing out. It was so amazing.
Man, it's almost like I'm hearing like that creativity or self-expression is, you could boil it down to like a response. Fundamentally, it's a response. Are you creating anything? No. Okay, well, is there nothing that you're responding to, nothing that you're experiencing or witnessing that you have a feeling or a thought about, a response to? Because that's all that the creativity and expression is.
Yeah.
That's brilliant. So if you're feeling blocked, sounds like one good suggestion is increase your inputs. Read some other things, see some things, talk to people, go places.
Yeah, it's felt like a translation for me.
A translation
from the input,
yes.
translating it into the output of, for me, it was poetry. And other people were tapping into their art. We had a lot of scrap wood there and things to make. And they taught us how to use the chainsaw. And
I saw those videos. I saw that. I was like, Patty.
I was so happy about that. I learned how to do an oil change by myself. I learned weed whacking. I mean, I don't know when I'll ever use that, but maybe one day when I have my garden.
Totally.
Yeah. But it was really, even if I'm never going to use those things again, there's just something about the process of learning something new, which is really beautiful.
Oof, let's go on that. So it's like you learn a skill. Cool. I know how to do this thing. You may never need to do that thing again, but in learning how to do it and doing it, what is gained?
Ooh. Everything I've done purposely in my life has been some sort of spiritual insight for myself. So it's just unlocking a part that I didn't know was there.
How's that work? Tell me more. I'm fascinated. Like unlocking. I learn this thing and I do it, and then describe the unlocking.
Well, it's only the mind that needs to use it for something later. It doesn't need to be kept. It directly puts me in a place that is presently here, new, fresh, every moment. So learning something new, very directly correlated to spirit, consciousness, awareness, soul, because that part of you is fresh and new every moment. And it's always having a direct, fluid pathway to newness. And it doesn't need to be kept for later. Maybe you decide to use it for something later, but it doesn't have to be. Nothing is lost, really.
Wow, yeah. So it sounds like the skill, when the mind wraps around, oh, this is a skill and I learned it, it could then ascribe a label. I'm a weed whacker. Or like, I know how to weed whack. And really, what's the value of that? But I was starting to pick up, I think what is one of our underlying themes here is that when you do something new, you have to meet the unknown. You have to meet the newness of the moment and go, I'm going to figure this out. So it's like you like push your consciousness into this other little place, and then something clicks, you observe, you connect the dots, and then boom, there's this expansion.
Yeah, and I would even go as far as to saying consciousness is pushing itself into that place, and really all you or I have to do is follow it. That was another big insight, main thing, that any discrepancy I was feeling or stuckness I was feeling was because I was resisting the movement that was naturally happening in that direction. So that, of course, wasn't clear until afterwards, which is sort of the caveat, I guess, to this whole process, is you're not going to know until if you feel the water is rushing in that direction, you can use as much as you possibly can and use the faith and trust that you have for yourself. Or if it's not there, just trying it anyways, and then just see what happens. There isn't really a wrong path here. I think that's something that needs to be highlighted, is that we're constantly saying, well, I want to make sure, am I on the right path? Am I on the right path? The entire thing is the right path. The entire thing, because if you're taking a detour, it's imagined because you're on the path right now as is. And all of that is designed to carve out the way, the Tao. That's another word for it. I always think of it as an artist who chisels the marble and then it reveals the structure underneath. So it's very similar to that.
Yes. In my spiritual upbringing, the spirituality in my family practice, that was very much the paradigm, the approach is, we're not building, amassing, accruing, piling up and stacking. There's nothing to add to your beingness. It's already fully, completely there. And so what is this experience we're having here on the human plane, where it seems like I'm like, oh, I gained this, or I added this, or I got more of this, right? And I hear you saying this reframe of that, of like, actually, we're just unfolding, we're just unveiling, we're just revealing what's already there.
Yeah, that's all the process of healing or life is just peeling back those layers. It's almost like even saying the words, I'm adding to this experience, well, adding to what? Because this is it.
This is all of it.
There's only ever something to let go of or unfold, because what it is by itself isn't made by us. It's just happening.
Mm-hmm.
Like the birds were in Hawaii and the whole experience was happening. So immersing myself in nature on that farm and having many moments where I would just take the blanket and picnic and look at the clouds. Got to many parts, I can't even say parts of myself, a spot inside of me that is not localized. It's paradoxical to say. I was just crying my eyes out full of love, and the only sentence that could come out of my mouth in my journal was, I don't have enough space in my heart for all of these people that I fell in love with here, all of these things that I experienced. And I had this feeling of grasping that was the only thing that was left. It was like everything else fell away, and there I was experiencing myself beautifully, perfectly as is. And the last finger hanging on to the edge of the ego before it fell apart in that moment was, can I keep it? Can I keep it? Can I keep this experience? It was a feeling of that was so overwhelming. And I almost wanted to like take everybody in my pocket and bring them with me back to San Diego, but it was time to, there were many hellos and goodbyes there. And that was another part that you had to get used to.
It's all part of it, you know. We don't live here, we're woofing. We're here temporarily, and there's a time when we leave.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so what do we do with it all, and how do we feel about it, and what do we do with what we feel? And in a way, that experience was perfectly designed to sort of like pour in a bunch of, let's just say, beauty, the people, the time, the connections, the learning, you know, let's just say beauty, because wow, it really like shines and has this radiance to it, and it's all, we have a wow feeling about it. So I don't know, let's just call it beauty. However, there's these parts of us that brings out all our cups, and we're like, oh, pour it here, pour it there, and I'm gonna keep this, and then like, oh shit, it's going bad already. Like, or it's not like, wait, I don't have enough cups. Like there's like this sense of you can't keep or contain it all, and so then, and you're not even supposed to. You don't even have to. Why? Because I think when we really get hip to it, and we get in rhythm with this flowing current of life, we realize it's constantly flowing. It's abundance that's endless.
Yeah, that was what helped me through that, is because I had to, you can find in what you say where the issue sort of lies. It's like, I don't have enough space in my heart for all these people and all of these things. Who said there was a limit to that? You know? And I'm not going to run out of these experiences or people. I mean, maybe I won't see that same person again, but I was experiencing love in different forms, in the clouds as they passed by, in the memories of my friend who had passed, or music, or a new person that I met from a different country, or the jokes or the laughs. And I'm like, love comes in so many different forms. I think where I was getting stuck is thinking it had to come in the same way every single time. And that it's, even in the darker parts when it felt like love wasn't there, the hiding of it is just part of it emerging again. So it is still playing in the background the whole time, which was another insight.
Oh, I love that. That's like, I think, another one of those reframes. And I only say reframe because if we don't tend to see life that way, and there's a new way of seeing it, it can really make what we're experiencing feel like it's in a brand new setting, and like it makes sense, and like it's perfect and beautiful. And so I really hear that there. It's like the love is always coming, always unfolding, always on its way. So if it seems like one form came and that form left, is love and all of love gone? No. I mean, love is ever present, right? But how open and available are we to see it, to recognize it, to receive it? Could it be in all these trees out here, or the breeze, you know? And that, so what that does is it gets us to expand our definition, our sense of love. And so today, in this moment, what would you say love is to you? Now that you've been through this beautiful practice.
It's, as cliche as it sounds, it's quite literally everywhere in everything that we are doing. And I think it makes sense to me now saying that we were born from love, because I could clearly see that in Hawaii. I was afraid of coming back. I thought maybe I would lose it, but I knew that that couldn't be lost once I experienced it in the clouds and the birds and the coming and the going. And so I sort of came back in this non-localized place where I would, you know, I'd be at a coffee shop and having a conversation with a stranger, knowing I'm never going to see them again. The moment was beautiful, and there it was again. It was coming again. But when the mind is so crowded with beliefs and worries and future and past, there is no opening to see that. So before Hawaii, I just wasn't open enough to see that it is everywhere. I mean, someone could say it to me and maybe I can say it with words.
Like a concept. As
a concept, but I was truly having that experience. And I mean, again, this came with a lot of struggle and before and leading up to it. And the first 2 weeks that I was there, Julia, my partner, came with me 3 weeks in, and we broke up a week later.
Nice.
And so we spent about a month and a half just having a different relationship to each other, which was also challenging. So we sort of became each other's mentor rather than the romantic side of it had fallen away. We both were having this healing experience that the farm was allowing for us. And yeah, it was quite incredible. It was almost like we didn't have to do a single thing, that the farm and nature and the entire experience just took over and was like, don't worry, I got it. Everything you need to know. Like that's the way that it went. And there isn't a single thing that I would change.
Wow. What an inquiry to just pause right where you are, wherever you are in the world, in your world, and just sort of inquire, what is in the space around me? What is this environment that's holding me? How is this environment I'm in holding me, moving me, pushing me, pulling me, healing me, inspiring me? Just like to tune in. That's like an expansion of our experience, because it tends to be very us and on us and inward and localized. Here's my body, so here's my experience.
Here I am, here's my thinking, here's who I am, what I do,
and this is everything, right? But when we're in a setting or an environment that draws our attention out, maybe by necessity or just by inspiration, like, wow, look at all this jungle around me, then it expands the sense of space in which we're having our experience, right? So to hold that frame of like, here we are in a room, do our minds expand beyond this room? I'm putting room in quotes, by the way.
Yeah, that's something actually I teach in the beginning of my yoga classes sometimes, is having people close their eyes and feeling the awareness inside the body, then flickering the awareness outside of the borders of the skin. Okay, I'm aware of the space. And then if you can observe it, the space itself doesn't change. Yeah, your attention goes outside and the attention can be focused what it feels like inside the body, but the space itself inside the borders of the skin and the space itself on the outside is made of the same space. And that's so, so important. And it's the same in nature all around you. The space that makes up the inside of this room versus the space that makes up the outside. Yeah, it does have different qualities. You can talk about the air, but there is no fundamental difference to it. That is so important because it's what we are. And that's something that became very potent throughout the entire process. So then once that's recognized, I'm like, oh my God, there's nothing I have to do. There's no one I have to be. And then that's a whole nother, like, wow, oh my God, I can rest now. I can just, you still have your personality, you still have preferences and things you like to do, but they're not to become anything or to prove anything to anyone. They're just a natural flowing.
Wow, that one's powerful. Just to think, if I tell myself there's no one I have to be, and then what follows is a feeling like I can rest. Oh,
that's what we're all looking for.
That's insightful. That was good data. I needed that. Thank you. Like, so what am I doing? What is this effort, this incessant effort? Not to exist, but to like be a certain thing or something.
Yeah.
Existing is just automatic.
Right. We don't have to do that part.
Yeah. And so it's like, how okay am I with my existence? With just simply existing, just being here. Okay, I'm here. Here I am. I'm here. It's like, and when I just ask that, it like inspires me, I guess I'd say energetically, emotionally, just to go into that or to like lean into that. And then I can feel that there's a little floating there. Like, and to me, that feels like, okay, I can move into that vibe and rest there. I'm like, just be. Right, and then I do it.
Yeah.
And then I feel like how quickly I want to move on to be like, so anyway,
exactly. And that little space, because this is also I was able to see it so much more clearly because I had created the space in the farm to just I was doing the same thing every day, worked till 1, and I chopped down and deadheaded the flowers that we didn't need, and learning this and learning that. And then what would come? Well, what do I do next after work? And I actually, I had the privilege of not having anything to do, so that is important. I know many people don't, but what if I just sit and just be here? Something just wants to move so quickly to the next thing, but it's never fulfilled because we always end up here wanting to move somewhere, and that's all it ever becomes. And we might accomplish some things, and that's great, but then there's the want or the need to rest, which is the pull from grace to come back here again. So it's all just leading to this place, really.
I want to go back to love for a little bit.
Teehee.
Yeah. Because I feel like there's so much there. I mean, infinity is there. But I think we all have a sense of what love is, okay? But then finding the words and just like context on me and who I am, and like I'm a songwriter, so that's what's informing a lot of like my language and my connection to music and writing and self-expression, and that's one of my big lenses. And so there's a part of me that feels the essence of love immediately, right? But then I want to share it, and that's why we communicate. What is communication for? The exchange of knowledge and information. there's a bear over there. There's berries on that tree. I love you, etc. Right? And so the definition of love that is really helpful in orienting, I think, positively for me is this, and it remains this. To love someone, let's say, is to see and accept them exactly as they are.
Because they are that in that moment.
Yeah.
And it can't be any different.
Yes.
Right. That's why it feels
right.
good.
Because that thing of like, I see you, but you're supposed to be something else.
That's the discrepancy.
Yeah. And that's the, I don't accept you. Right.
Right.
So to love is to allow.
Right.
Accept everything as it is. This moment is enough. This moment is enough. That's the essence of love.
Because love is, it's bringing everything back together as a whole picture. And anytime we have an idea of something, we're one step out from what it is. And so then there's the discrepancy, there's the separation, there's the duality in the experience, because it is what it is. And we're having an idea about what it's not. And that's why when we talk about what we really are, it's described in words like love, oneness, wholeness. We're also, when we're seeking a romantic relationship or maybe a friendship, we're seeking to be whole in some way, shape, form, and another. If we're coming from a place of feeling separate, then there's love of, well, you feel whole and complete already, and you just want to celebrate. But yeah, I mean, that's why love is described as this bringing together. And that's what made sense to me when I was there too, is because I heard so many times that we are love, in the, especially in the love and light sort of community. Yeah, okay, I can see it, but how is this, shadowy side to me love? I don't really get that. Or how is this suffering in the world love? That would trip me out. But when you're looking at it from they don't mean like love as what it truly means is, doesn't mean love, romantic love, like we're all just like woo. It means wholeness, coming together. It's the entire picture. It's the yin and the yang. It's both sides to the mountains. It's also your shadow and your light part. It's the love is the bringing together of those two pieces. So accepting someone for who they are, as they are in that moment, besides the idea that you have of them, puts you in a place of love.
To me, it feels like you embody that so well.
I tried. Thank you.
Yeah. You get that, it clicks. And you bring and offer that to people, Like, you don't put a ton of, like, criteria on when they deserve that. Like, you try to live right in that space.
Yeah. Keyword try. Recognizing a lot of belief systems in me that were seen more instantaneously in Hawaii than ever before, because again, all that space, I got to see the insides of how Patty thought and how, beliefs that I had about certain things, or maybe something that made me frustrated. I'm like, that's so interesting. Like, why does this particular thing bother me so much? All of that, again, was information for me to try and allow people to be the way that they were, for the experience to be the way that it was. I mean, even a preference of it raining when I didn't want it to rain. Seriously, I used all, like, oh man, I wish it wasn't raining. All I was hearing was my own complaining the entire time if I had spent days like that. I'm like, you're in Hawaii. Like, first of all, you couldn't wait to get out of San Diego at that time to go to Hawaii. And now you're taking yourself with you complaining about the rain. So that was something, again, why I said I changed things so that I can see what's not changing, or what are the things that do stick,
or what's resisting what is.
Right.
Yeah.
And the paradox is that essentially I didn't have to go to Hawaii to learn any of that, and neither does anybody else. But on my life's journey, paradoxically, I did have to go to Hawaii to realize that I didn't need to go to Hawaii to experience that. And now it makes sense too, because I've heard a spiritual teacher say before, I think it was Ram Dass, that you don't have to go to the caves of the Himalayas to meditate. Just put yourself in the city and see how much you're resisting all the sounds and all the people, and you'll learn really quickly where you're not.
Right.
And all that it does when you go anywhere is just show you where you're not and where you are.
Yeah, well, it's an inside job, they say, and wherever you go, there you are. And so sometimes we do need to go to find out there we are. Right? And sometimes we need to leave to find out I'm still here. Actually, it's not over there with them in that situation. Now, it doesn't mean we don't change our situations. Doesn't mean we don't make changes. Acceptance doesn't mean we tolerate everything. So let's talk about that, because I think that's one of the big resistors to, accepting things as they are. There's a lot of things that we don't want to accept as they are. War and etc. Like, that shit sucks. And so how do we walk this line of I'm accepting what is, I'm not denying what's happening or happening for me, however, I'd like things to be better. How do we navigate that?
Ooh, that's a question that's asked of a lot of teachers, and I can try and translate what they've said. I
want to hear what you think.
But what I think, it's similar.
Yeah.
I don't think that anytime you're operating from ego, duality, separateness, this or that, the horizontal plane, black and white, I want to be all light and love. I don't want to look at my shadow. Anytime you're dividing, there can't really be a total solution to wholeness, because you can't come from separateness to wholeness. Wholeness only comes back to itself. And what I mean by that is, I think everyone should have some sort of vehicle, whether it's meditation, music, whatever it is that makes you feel centered or at whole, and then make decisions from that place, because that's going to give you a more true answer than your mind can come up with. Your mind is only running on computerized information, basically, of the past and what it can formulate for the future. But the unknown lies beyond that, in a place that can only be accessed through practice, maybe of meditation, or like a surfer might tap into that place on the waves, etc., etc. So getting yourself to that place, or anyone in the world to that place, I think has more of a benefit than anything else. Number one, maybe last thing too.
So start in a place of what? It's like, I'm noticing this thing in my life or this situation. I don't like it. I don't want it. I want to make a change. What's my first step? I guess maybe that was the first step.
Yeah, that was
awareness.
Yeah,
acknowledgement, desire.
Right, and for me, how it showed up too is quieting my mind so much that I can hear my heart, because your heart is more of that soft, still voice. It's not so loud. Mind has id, super ego. I think in psychology, it's like the devil and the angel on the shoulder. And then there's you trying to make the right decision between the two. All of that is part of the mind. And I really don't think that if we're going to talk about right and wrong choices, I think it's more like truth and not truth. Choices. So how I've made decisions in the past, and this is something that I friggin' still struggle with, is I have to get myself to a clear place via meditation. It's my vehicle. And then have a tremendous amount of trust and faith that the universe knows what it's doing, because it's all functioning by itself already without me having to do anything. So wherever that is going to take me, I have to trust that that is part of my life's path, the trajectory of it. And that showed itself a lot, actually, coming to Hawaii with the relationship, because it was supposed to just be me, and then somebody left the farm suddenly, I guess, and there was a spot open, and she did come, and I actually was at first, I'm like, oh no, but this is going to be a Patty experience. But then I'm like, no, I trust now, at least in this moment, since it's brought me to here, that whatever is going to come of it is going to come of it. And then the entire experience itself too, not even just the relationship. So, but when I was in my mind trying to make a decision about what to do for my future, I couldn't, it went in circles. So it never comes to a solution from that place. So if you're finding yourself not able to come to a conclusion, then you're using your head too much. You're analyzing it too much. You're coming from a place of mind, ego, duality, separateness, and again, just allowing yourself to come to a deeper place and trusting that it's gonna work out the way that it is anyways. I spent countless amounts of time, this is the last part I have to say about it, countless amounts of time worrying about what my next move was going to be after San Diego, and it had been going on for 2 years. What was I doing with my life? Where am I going to go next? Is this the place? Do I want to get another apartment here and see where it goes? I would say if I had any regret, which there really isn't any because I came to the point where I am now, but if I did, it would have been, I spent so much time worrying and it worked out the way it did anyways. And we can look back at our lives and see that for anything. Because it all ended up here. So then what am I to actually do? I just have to hear the call and follow. And the call might just be the next step. So that doesn't mean forever when you hear the call in your heart. So the next step was Hawaii. And then in the middle of Hawaii, it became very evident to me that Colorado was my next place to be, because I had been wanting to move there before here. My friend that had passed and I were supposed to move there together. So I was experiencing wanting to be around mountains and just the call of mountains coming up so much for me, so much. So I ended up, I'm like, I don't know how I'm going to go there, what to do with my cat, all the details. But I went online and I looked for, well, what if I woof there to just get my feet in the water? And I applied to all these different kinds of woofing experiences in Colorado. And what's funny is that before all of this happened, at the cafe that I was working at, I was meeting a lot of people from Durango, Colorado, randomly. I'm like, I never heard of Durango. They're like, oh, I'm from Durango. I'm like, cool, never heard of that. I've been looking at Colorado to move there, and I don't know where to go. And then somebody would come in and say, oh, like, what are you going to do? Oh, I'm going to Hawaii, and maybe I'll go to Colorado after. And they're like, you know where you should go? You should go to Durango, Colorado. What? And I'm like, why is this coming up so much? So fast forward, in the middle of Hawaii, after applying and seeing, okay, maybe this is the call to do something next. The one person that responds to me out of probably 30 or 40 that I can bring my cat to, because I have to bring my cat with me this time, as somebody's watching her now, was a little farm in Durango, Colorado. What? And he's like, more than welcome to bring your cat. I had the interview and I was in the garden, and there was another girl there from Spain, and she just held me, and I'm like, I'm going to the mountains now. This is it. Wow. And I'm telling that experience because I never freaking knew the difference between what is the mind saying in the heart? How do you know it's intuition? How do you know it's the mind? That experience happened. Thank you so much. And it just felt right. It just felt, I don't know if I'm going to be in Colorado for the rest of my life, but it's clearly the next step. Yeah. And it happened so easily. Just fell in line. Clearly. And so clearly that to even have that reaction, I mean, it felt, there wasn't a question in my head like, oh, am I making the right choice? The only thing that kept me from going to Colorado this entire time was actually fear that I'd be disappointed. Yeah. So that will come into, if you have an idea of something you want to do with your heart, fear plays on both sides. There's the fear of staying comfortable, and then there's the fear of doing the thing that you want to do. And that's why it can be very hard to hear,
to navigate
everything going on.
But that stillness that you talked about returning to, like, how can I get to a clear and still place so that I can listen and hear, and it's running on the trust, the presumption that the answer is there, it's within, That's why I always tell people that are like deliberating on, any decision or a big one, actually always know immediately. However, what plays out is us struggling to accept what we knew
the whole time.
Yeah. And so I'm still betting that is the case. Calm ourselves, be still, listen, and we will hear what's speaking to us. Now, how it plays out or what happens after that, like, there's so many unknowns, and you don't have to know all that to just recognize I'm going to Colorado.
Yeah. It also, you can't look for it through the mind, which is like really hard to explain because it's a felt experience. But there's many times where I felt myself scanning for the call, or what is my intuition? And then I'd have a thought, I'm like, is that my intuition? And then there was fear around that thought, and I'm like, no. I would go back in my head and I'd say, I've heard some people say that intuition doesn't have any fear in it. So because that thought has fear, then that one's not I was doing math. I was literally doing math. Calculation. Yeah. That ended up happening in Vipassana a lot in the meditation. So my head was crazy there. But yeah, it's my mind did not want to hear the words "you already know." That made my stomach drop because what I already knew wasn't what I wanted to hear. Yeah. And many times it comes like that.
Yes. Yeah. And what's best for us isn't always what the mind is chattering about. Because, like, the mind gives options, and so there's options, there's solutions, there's the highest desire. And of course, we'd like all that to overlap and be the same thing. But sometimes all the options are not the highest desire.
Right.
And so here's an option. It's available. It's being offered to me. And there goes the mind upsetting. How cool. It's free, or it's da-da-da-da. Mm-hmm. But is that your highest desire? So sometimes saying no thank you, to things that are offered, we don't want to make someone else feel bad, or we don't want to be without something, or we think, how cool, free stuff, or, but it's like, but is this really your highest desire? And so it takes such tremendous trust. It still does for me to be like, okay, this is here this is, so I attracted it. Sometimes we think that too. Well, it's here, so I must have attracted, so it's right. It makes it right. So I should maybe this is right.
Now
But-
the ego can attract things too.
Yes, it always is actually.
Yeah.
Everything is, and
Yeah.
I love all the Durango signs you got, because I feel like if we pay attention to our life, if we look at it almost from this place like you were illustrating of how you became aware of yourself, and then you asked, why am I getting annoyed with the rain? It suggests that you had shifted further back from your usual place of being, because you could, one, observe it, and two, question it. Okay, so you're separate from it, right?
That's exactly all everything ever is in that process. When I was explaining back to making a truthful decision, it's sort of just, you can't do it from the place that you're operating from. It's sort of either you have to take a break or whatever. That's what I had to do, because I couldn't hear anything clearly. I'm like, oh, well, for me, I'm going to Hawaii and taking 2 months off to be in nature and
try to figure out how to hear
and how to listen.
Yeah.
Quite literally, to myself and to other people. But yeah. And God, you can learn so much. It is all right here, because anything that is, it's all just space in here. So if there is something that it's bouncing off of, what is that? Rather than what that person is doing, so to speak. That doesn't mean you don't say no to things. That's, part of it. But yeah, working and living and being in a community with people in the farm, we were all stripped down to that place. And some of us were having different experiences. I mean, for me, because I was also grieving, there was many times where it was so instantaneous that something reminded me of her. And I was, having to go through something that was coming up from the bottom, like burping almost. Spiritual burping.
Spiritual burping.
It's just like coming up rather than if I had been working all day here or keeping myself busy because there's 10,000 things to do here. Maybe it wouldn't have come up. And then they live on us like little ghosts. And then we wonder why we're so anxious. Well, we got 10 ghosts living inside of us that are trying to crawl out just to be released back into nothingness again.
Yeah.
But who are we to keep them down because we don't want to rip the Band-Aid off or recognize that they're there in the first place?
Or see a shadow or have a shadow come out. Right.
So that was also something. That turned into nothing. There was another profound experience that I had actually, and it came from trying to catch a duck. So,
how do you catch a duck? All right, here we go.
101. Yeah. We were trying to get rid of 10 ducks. We had way too many ducks on the farm. Someone else was buying them.
Okay.
They were going in a safe place to get them in a cage and then go off to someone else. But we all had to work together. Mind you, we're a farm of all women, badass women. The managers were these two 25, 26-year-old women that worked so hard, knew so much about so many things, and I looked up to them so much. And there's 5, 6 of us with towels. We're trying to figure it out together. I think this was their first time catching ducks, actually. And they're like, all right, we're just going to try to like get them nicely in the blanket if you see one, and then put them in the cage, and then,
sounds simple enough.
Sounds simple, right? Yeah. Well, I learned something about myself that day because the way that we were all positioned, there was a female duck closest to me. So I was the one that had to get it, and I was avoiding it so much. I'm like, I feel uncomfortable. I don't know why. I know I'm only putting it in a blanket, but I still feel weird.
You're worried about hurting it, maybe?
Yeah, I don't know. I just felt like I was getting nervous and uncomfortable doing it.
Yeah, like, and I'm going to give you some trauma, duck.
Exactly.
You'll probably forget it tomorrow, but...
Right, I'm putting myself in its body. I'm like, oh, fuck. So I end up, it's right next to me, and I'm like, of freaking course. And they're like, Patty, it's right there. Hurry, get it. And I panic, and I wrap the whole blanket around it, and its neck sort of gets caught in the blanket and starts to wail, crying in my arms. And I froze. And there wasn't any thinking going on, but looking back, I knew I was causing suffering to something, and I also was simultaneously feeling its pain so much that immediately I couldn't do anything, and my bottom lip starts to curl, and I go, and I start bawling and shaking, and they're like, it's okay. I clearly couldn't do it. Oh my God. They're like, give it to us. We got it. It's okay. And I'm like, and I'm like, I need to go somewhere and take a break. And I'm like,
you needed that experience? Did you?
I did need that experience because I didn't know, one, that I could carry emotion from another being so directly into my body like that, and two, it had been related to trauma to myself, and how it just still is living in there, like again, like a little ghost, where something so tiny that didn't have a lot of say or anything to control in that situation, and how that felt just reminded me a lot of growing up and things that I had gone through. But it was very instantaneous. It was not a process that I was thinking in my forefront.
Somatic and automatic.
Very somatic. So and there was a lot of experiences like that. I got stung by a bee on the face, and I turned into a 5-year-old child. I'm like,
I probably would too the first time.
Everybody, look, I got
I got stung.
Meanwhile, the managers are like, we get stung 17 times a day. It's just kidding. But there was a lot you learn about yourself in that environment as well.
Totally. Man, remember when we were talking about space and we're talking about love, and like, it's the space around everything. It fills all space. Funny enough, there's this music quote that's like, the music is in the space between the notes. Yeah, right? And so, right? And so, I often, like, as someone who, I think I've maybe been an HSP, highly sensitive person, empath, and these were all things that, were labels that I discovered or people introduced me to, and it gave a lot of context and validation to, in ways to navigate through the experiences I was having of energy, emotion, and thoughts that was just overwhelming for a long time. And I began to make this, out of necessity, this distinction between me, my experience, and another being, creature, and its experience. Because obviously there's a connection. There could seem like there's an overlap or a merging, but can there be that union, right? Like what love is, and simultaneously distinction, right? Because, we talk about holding space for people, and then we get so overwhelmed, we need space from them. And it's like, and that helped me realize, often when we say or think we're holding space, we're actually holding the thing, the trauma. We're not holding just space. Space is empty, and love fills all space. So we should be able to hold space, no problem. But when I'm holding space, and then I feel heavy, right? So this distinction between another's experience and ours, like, and also what art in poetry is as a response. I thought, when you had that response to that duck and its pain, its agony, how much of that would you say was you feeling literally its experience, or you responding with your own?
Both.
Okay.
Yeah.
Long question? Yeah. Short answer. Love it.
Because I was experiencing its agony and pain in my body. It connected with my experience.
Resonance or
yeah. And so it was, I'm feeling what's happening here, and it's connecting with a place in here. How it relates to holding space for someone, I think if you can actually hold the space and not the trauma, then you don't become the trauma for that person. You are holding the space for it to come up and come out, because anything held in space can move. It doesn't have a block against it. So, you know, and it also comes back to that question of how do you hold space for something and be open at the same time? Can you say no to something or not allow it to happen in your experience? I think the mind wants to know yes or no to those things, and it depends, because you can be holding someone so lovely and saying no at the same time. And I do keep relating this back to the relationship that when we separated, it was a saying no, yet we were still holding space for the process of the no and the reaction of the no to happen, which was a learning process. It's like, am I okay? I'm holding space. But then it was coming from, at the times where it was coming from love, when you're seeing that person or that creature as another human being, as another blip, just like you are, and you see them behind their eyes and all the things that they're going through, you don't so much get attached to their concerns and their story of this is what's going on for me and I'm feeling this way. If you're able to connect in that space for it to come up, you know that they're just having a chapter or quality to their experience, and there isn't anything you have to necessarily do about it. Just allow it to be so it can move. And then from there, it might look like giving space and being in that place of love might look like the words no. That's the part that's really very interesting to understand, because I certainly have done that my whole life. I'm like, I'm trying to come from a place of love as I started learning meditation and yoga, and I'm just going to say yes to everything. I'm like, no. We tried that through the mind of saying yes to everything. And what ended up happening is I'm going out all the time with my friends, and I'm saying yes to this and that. And then, it's not through the mind. It's a saying yes in the heart means you're saying yes to the acceptance of the experience. And that might include no. So that's where yes and no happen.
Totally. Like, wow, if I'm honest with myself in this moment, I am a no to this thing, to this part. Not to all of you.
Right.
But to this request, right? Let's be clear. Are you asking for something? Are you wanting something from me? Let's be clear on what that is so I can give you a good answer, an honest answer. Okay, I'm clear. I'm a no to that, but I'm a yes to all these things. I'm a yes to feeling the no with you.
Yeah.
I'm a yes to what comes up.
Right. And it's also really helpful to ask the question, is this serving the wholeness of the picture? Again, we're coming back to wholeness versus separation, which is fun to say.
Yeah.
And again, I keep bringing it to the relationship. It's just so beautiful how it happened, because we were realizing that if we stay together, we're just going to be kind of like a sim. What's that game of The Sim where they're just running into the wall? That's what it feels like. It's like we're doing the same things, and it's going only. We were in each other's lives for a certain period of time that helped us grow in one way. And now those parts are changing, and we can either grow together or see if it's going to grow together really, or if it's not, then accepting that that's the time that you had, and then whatever needs to come from there. But it was that was just out of everything that I was learning on the farm, that was another piece that was super healing. And
yeah, to come to completeness in an experience, a type of connection with someone, and to know that you're at the completeness. Often we know right away, right?
yeah.
And then we're like, I don't want to say anything. I don't want to disappoint you. Or,
Yeah.
or like you came all this way, or all these things, right? But man, we got to honor that thing. And so if we've been practicing that all along with ourselves, to some degree, I'm not saying be perfect, but if we've been noticing that, wanting to practice that, and then practicing that with someone in our relating, I think ideally there's some space for that. And so eventually we bring our voice, and or before we even say the words, it's felt.
Yeah.
It's like, man, we're not, it just doesn't feel like before. We notice, right?
Yeah.
And then we speak to it and bring words, and to come to completeness with someone and go through that process compassionately, openly, no rush, no like, I gotta get away from this, I gotta end this now.
Yeah.
I mean, there's some things, of course, if you gotta end it right away for your safety, then you do that. But in this kind of space, like to get to, I guess some people call that conscious uncoupling. Would you?
Yeah, that's
say
what we
Okay.
we use. Yeah, it was. Also, I was in the scenario and the predicament of living and being on a farm until we told the managers we're both here till June 1st. So there wasn't question, should I go? I'm like, let's just see how it goes. And I don't want to give the advice of see how it goes, because I have turned that into, I'm just going to see where this is going, where it was clearly a no in my heart so many times.
Yeah.
But in that case, with all the parts that I had, I knew that I needed to be in Hawaii. I couldn't say for her what she needed for her life. I couldn't make that decision. So I did my best to sort of just take my hands off the steering wheel, and whatever was coming up is what I worked with, or we worked with. So it felt like just school. It's like school in a way, you know?
Totally.
Yeah, there was so many things, like just even being aggravated while working, or I have this fun quality apparently where we were sharing the shelf of food, and after the breakup I went through like, your stuff's over there, my stuff's over here.
Separation.
There's a line here. And this is my honey. But even just watching that, I'm like, that's funny. That's so interesting. It doesn't mean it doesn't come up, doesn't mean I deny that it's coming up, but just noticing that it's there is enough to learn something about yourself and for it to be school.
Oh, it's such a mirror. Everything, especially relationships. And so to see this, is that petty, or is it, insignificant?
It definitely was. Yes.
But the bigger compassion I want to wrap around that is like, oh, well, that's just a sign, or that's something trying to emerge that comes from within a feeling and a need, right? Needs-based relating. What is the need behind making a separation, a distinction between you and your stuff? Same thing. We are our stuff, or your space and mine, and just the need for, hey, as we're uncoupling, in a physical sense, the physical form representation, I need some separation there as well, so that I can, reestablish some sense of autonomy or boundaries, or just kind of untangle a little bit of this interdependence. What should we do? Well, what do you want to do? Well, how about we do this? Okay, that, but then this, like just the entanglement, right?
Yeah. I think what you said is really important, because at one level it's just me wanting my stuff to be separate, but there is a deeper place to it. And it was just me wanting autonomy again, because a lot, when you are in a relationship, and especially for me, my pattern is that I sort of lose myself or have the appearance of losing myself to someone else, and what they want to do ends up becoming my day. And then I look back after 2 weeks, I'm like, did I even write like I wanted to, or look at the birds like I wanted to, you know? And that's really important in a relationship, because I think it should just be two people who are having their independent experience and they're sharing as a bonus together, rather than you complete me or whatever that saying is.
Yeah.
So I definitely did a lot of that in this past relationship, where I was holding so much space for someone else that I forgot about myself. So it was kind of like reclaiming my space again, where I'm like, wait, no, what is Patty I'm doing? You know, and it came on strong because I was so much on one end of the pendulum that now I was, it felt like maybe being received from the other person like a wall. But it was necessary for me to reclaim what my space is and what it is that I want to do, so that I can feel the balance of where I am.
Yes.
So
and it's gonna happen, it's gonna come. If we do it all at once, it's a little rough, right? But
yeah,
it's gonna come. So it's like almost like a just, you know, take the Band-Aid off kind of thing, but also like okay, maybe the first few of these is gonna sting a little bit, you know, but that, if we can remain compassionate, that's a mirror of the way in which we're connected and attached. We're designed to be connected, we're designed to be interdependent and to need each other and lean on each other, and hopefully it's always able to be maintained as, you know, reciprocal and healthy, you know, but it takes adjustments to, even in a, you know, overall healthy relationship connection, to be like, hey, I love being there for you, but I feel like I'm being there for you like 100%. Could we dial it back to 82?
Yeah.
And maybe I'd like it if that still works for you, because then that would give me a little room, because I know myself and I tend to just, once we connect, I'm the lover archetype. I'm all in and I'm absorbed until I disappear.
Yeah.
That's oneness, right?
Yeah. The example of, in French, I think orgasm translates to tiny death, because you don't exist in that moment.
Yeah.
In falling in love, there's that dance that each other does, like a moth to the flame, because you know, when you both do, you cease to exist, basically. And so there's a lot of fear around the dance, and there's a lot of, well, this is my space and this is yours, and because I'm afraid what'll happen if I totally let go. Now, that doesn't mean that you give up your whole life to the person, but just the experience of love is a lot more deep than that. It contains pretty much everything, so it also contains and separation as well.
I want to say for myself that that tending to needs connects directly to my completeness, actually. You know, I don't want those to be like at odds with each other. Like, I need something. Oh, you're not complete? It's like, no, that's not the implication.
Right.
The implication is that to experience my completeness in the way that feels best for me, the need is a request, you know? And so I'm going to make it of existence. And if they're able to support that in some way, like, I love that for you, bro. Or, yes, let me get in there and hug you. Or, let's sit down and talk about it. Like, whatever form, then that need connects directly to that sense of completeness that I want to feel.
And the need was being fulfilled, but the request was no longer needed anymore. So then it was sort of, well, what now? And then that's where the decision to move in different ways was. So I absolutely think that it served a purpose, and many people do in our lives, no matter relationship, friendship, family members. Again, it's all information. But the request, was the question no longer needed
Well,
an answer.
then
so
I
to
would
speak.
say in some sense the need was fulfilled. The
Yeah.
need was met.
Yeah.
It's like, thanks, I got it.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
And it's important. It's important that we also recognize there's so much emphasis that I'm putting on consciousness, awareness, love, but we're also still in these human bodies and we still have needs and there's boundaries and there also shouldn't be any denial of those requests that your self might need.
That you're experiencing in this human form. So we don't need to shame those needs, those desires.
Teehee.
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 That was the end and the beginning. Good stuff.
Yeah.
I feel like I could talk to you for hours.
Yeah, I feel that way too.
There's a lot of depth.
But not heavy.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so interesting.
It's like illuminating.
Shout out to everyone I met in the woofing. I want to keep you in my pocket.
Aw.
I definitely can point out when banana trees need to be pruned now. So,
Keen on that skill. Yeah. Love it.
okay. Thank you so much.
My pleasure, Patty. Thank you.
Yeah. Tea.
Tea. I was waiting for it.